Hello and welcome to the Utropeia podcast. I am your host, Ken, middle initial A, last name Duh.
Oh, Canada.
I was gonna make an Akira joke. I guess we can go there.
You are listening to the Utropeia podcast. I'm your host, Ken, aka Pumpken. This is a podcast where we talk about tropes. Sometimes we're specific, sometimes we get into plot structure, sometimes we get into archetypes, sometimes we get into character powers. But this week we are talking about plot armor. It's going to be a little bit of a different structure for what we usually do, so if this is your first time, welcome. But first, let me introduce some of our co-hosts and special guests on the border of excitement. It's Bill, Mr.Yu video.
I really was waiting for you to go with that one. Also, hello, I've returned.
Back from fixing our terrible mistakes from the Labyrinth episode.
It's actually funny, because there was, like, a huge mistake that I was, like, freaking out over, but Chris looked up the definition of a labyrinth later in the episode.
Yeah! I'm glad we set that time stream right. Well, speaking of Chris, hi, it's Chris Moonjump.
Moonjump!
Hey, jumping on the moon.
Where I can't
be
jumping on the moon.
Oh, and also helping us out with just about everything else, it's Todd Ogredose!
Yeah, I'm here too.
Here to protect us from the scare devils that are constantly frightened in this world.
All he has to do is fix their computer. I'll just start off with as many in-jokes as we can.
Well, that's kind of what this podcast is about. This is actually a pretty good jumpstart if you've never listened to it before. Just all these inside jokes. Just...
Alienating
there'll
your
be more to
listening
come,
base
don't worry.
101.
But a much better segue, just like the owner of the Segway, dying in a horrible death from falling off of a cliff, is we like to talk about what we are excited for / bummed out
That
about.
was not a good segue.
It wasn't. Just like
Just like that segue the guy fell off of.
Exactly. Both examples used of a segue were terrible. I'm glad we could correct this.
It's a rich, delicious taste of what we're going to do. A lot like chocolate milk.
Let's get them all out of the way.
Just get them all out of the way. It's kind of nice to hit them all like at the top of the episode. Just ring them. Like the pun bell that we use every... I don't think I've ever explained the pun bell before.
No,
except
no.
for
Leave
the
it.
intro.
The mystique intrigues.
What is this? Is this a podcast? What's going on?
Wait, are we supposed to be bummed out about something?
I guess.
Or excited.
We're excited.
All this cast
No, bummed
of
out comes later,
pods.
Todd.
Is this a podcast? So, Chris, what are you excited for / bummed out about this week?
All right, well, for this week, actually, Lego released a new set that's actually really awesome for people who've liked kind of the more sciencey space that they've done, space sets that they've done. They've released a set called Ultra Agents, kind of like their wacky secret agent set, and it's got some really cool kind of sci-fi-ish.
Yeah, Ken, actually, you'd probably like the car that they have. It looks very Tron-esque.
Ooh,
It does.
I do like Tron.
Remind me, I'll link you to it after the
Yes.
cast. And
And I'll look at it and I'll say, that's really cool. Maybe I'll buy that and then I'll have it on my shelf and I'll say, how did this get here? But I'll be happy about it.
what am I doing with my life?
What am I doing with my life? Then Jeff Bridges
This
will
is
say,
not
it's
my
okay,
beautiful
son.
house. This is not my beautiful wife.
Oh, did I
This
get
is not
it?
my son, my beautiful son.
Now that's a good segue.
Is it because it segues into what you're excited for / bummed out about this week, Todd?
What am I excited about? I finally got to see Dawn of Planet of the Apes, which
How was that?
It was really good.
Mhm.
It was a really nice continuation from Rise, and it gets more into like the dystopian future kind of thing. It takes place about 10 years after the end of Rise, so you get to see kind of how the planet's gotten a little mucked up, and it goes into a little more of like you follow the apes a little more. Like Caesar has like a son now, and it was it was really cool. It was a pretty like it was a little more suspenseful than Rise, and a little more actiony, just given because it wasn't like a build-up story. But I really enjoyed it, and I suggest if you have seen Rise or enjoy any of the Planet of the Apes movies, go check it out. Definitely.
I forewent to see Rise to see Snowpiercer instead last week. That's what it happened. And this weekend, it is Lucy. That is what I was interested in seeing. The Dr. Manhattan reimagining of Scarlett Johansson, but with drugs. That's as far as I can think of it. I think I summed it up pretty well.
Yeah, that sounds
that's
about right.
I think it's gonna look pretty cool actually, because we haven't seen like too many superhero female movies. I mean, if you want to count Elektra or Catwoman or anything else that's terrible,
don't want to count those.
then sure, go for it.
Those are actually negative. They subtract away from the amount of good female superhero movies there have been.
If you like counting in negative numbers, then good. Go for those. It's a good time. But yeah, no, I'll probably see Planet of the Apes later on. I think the cool thing about no, they are not sponsoring us, Amazon Prime, is that you can sometimes watch movies when they're in the theaters. I think I saw not Rise, Dawn of Planet of the Apes on the new roster, along with Snowpiercer.
Rise was the
That was the
first one
with James Franco.
Yep. And then
Yep.
Dawn is the new one.
Yes. Is James Franco in Dawn?
Not really.
Okay. Hey, Bill, what are you excited for / bummed out about?
Bummed out that James Franco is in Dawn.
Oh, you just crushed me.
This is the end of James Franco. Yeah, sure. All right.
So tomorrow, I'm excited for going back to the art museum for the art of video games.
Mm-hmm. That's an exhibit in Toledo?
Yes, the Toledo Art Museum,
Mhm.
Toledo Museum of Art. Proper saying. I just love the art museum out here. Like, it is the one thing I will show off if people come out
Mhm.
ever.
Your zoo is also very nice too in that neck
Yeah,
of the
actually,
woods.
I guess it was voted best in the country in some magazine or something.
Now look, I'm not saying that any zoo is necessarily worse or better, but I am saying that I have been to the Detroit Zoo, that I have been to the Columbus Zoo, and that I have also been to the San Diego Zoo. But I have been to the Toledo Zoo the most times, and I think enjoyed it the most times. So,
It's very well set up.
take from what you will from the pumpkin golem talking to you through the microphone.
And then I've recently started getting back into anime a little bit.
Yeah.
And I watched Darker Than Black the last couple days.
Yeah? How was it?
Yeah. It was actually really interesting. Like, I don't know if anybody here has seen it but Chris, because I know I talked to him about it. Essentially, it's like the power sets they're called contractors.
Huh.
And if they use their power, they have to fulfill the contract by doing something after they're done. Like, one guy has to write poetry when he's done.
Huh.
A woman eats cigarettes. Like, it's like this really weird thing. They have no control over it, and if they don't do it, it starts to drive them crazy.
Wow.
And it's yeah, it was a really interesting show. There's like this whole aspect of it that I think was a little much to the story, but it like was trying to do a world building thing where there's like a fake sky.
Like a Truman
And-
Show?
I was just gonna say the same
No,
thing.
never, like something fell and hit the earth and made like two giant craters on each like opposite sides of the world.
Okay.
Oh, so it's like Chicken Little.
But you can't see the
Like
proper
Mariah
stars anymore. And all the stars you see are linked to a contractor. So when they use their power, the star will start to glow really bright.
Huh.
So the police use that to like try to chase down contractors by identifying which star is connected to which person.
Huh.
That's a little complex and like over like this suspension of disbelief. But it was a good show overall. I won't be watching the second season because I hear it's garbage.
Oh, okay. They have like
But go ahead.
stakeout astronomers pretty much that just
Yep.
like watch the stars.
Like the organization's called Pandora.
Okay.
It's the UN makes a like task force, and yeah, they turn essentially observatories into like police headquarter kind of things, and they'll call it the agents on the field and tell them which star is activated. So if they know who it is, because the main character is BK201, like they don't have a name connected to him because they don't know who it is.
Right.
So they just say BK201 is active, so they know like that person with whatever power is out doing stuff.
Cool.
Yeah,
It
it
was an
sounds
interesting
neat.
show.
Yeah. You know what? Speaking of new shows, I'm actually digging the new season of Korra. Also,
I've heard it wasn't too bad.
I've you know what? The
And that's
first.
why Nickelodeon's ruining it.
Oh yeah, because it's not getting canceled. It's like on hiatus or super hiatus or
It's
something.
It's
Going
going to go to
digital.
digital.
Yeah, they're moving direct to digital.
Oh, so you can't see it. Oh,
Yeah, it won't even be on TV. It'll just be on the website and maybe on demand.
whoa. Which is weird because the last episode I watched had specific advertising for you can watch it here, not on the internet, and not anywhere else. Now they're just directly moving it to. Whoa. Okay.
Nickelodeon is like terrible now. Like I think they've gotten so used to just showing SpongeBob reruns that they don't know how to actually promote a new show anymore.
You're probably right.
That's a whole nother thing that I'd like to get into someday. Just how much I hate Cartoon Network and Nickelodeon sometimes.
No, we need to, because there's a lot of other stuff that we kind of want to talk about that don't necessarily go into like just tropes or anything in general. If you guys would like to hear us talk about other subjects, let us know, and maybe we'll start a couple of splinter channels. We're actually thinking about doing it more often. I actually put up.
Maybe we could do like a Utropia Presents series.
Yeah, that'd be fun. I'd be into that. I mean, yeah, you know what? Fuck it, I'll do it. It's my channel. I'll do what I want. So enjoy that.
You're the boss. You do what you want.
Yeah, boss. Yeah, boss.
Yeah, okay. Yeah, sure. Yeah, sure thing, yeah, boss. Also, if you guys want to see my Let's Play of Brothers, that's also up on one of my channels too. I'll post a link, maybe. Maybe I'll
really
cut this
good.
out. I'm glad you thought it was
We
funny.
watched it after watching The Three Musketeers.
The new one with the steampunk flying ships.
Oh,
from
no,
Mario
no,
3?
no, no, no.
Okay.
We watch one with Chris O'Donnell every year after we do the 48-hour film project.
Mhm.
It's our,
You're
it's
back.
our victory lap.
Okay. You know what? I realized something is that Comic-Con is going on pretty soon, and that you guys won't be visiting us and taking the 15-minute tour of my hometown and getting pizza and hot wings later.
Like us discussing, this is very casual talk.
It is.
For
You know
what are you excited about?
It's you know what? This is kind of an unorthodox sort of way of doing it, because I wanted to just kind of talk about the plot armor just in general, because there's no like doing it good or doing it bad is kind of weird to place. For
That's a
plot
very
armor.
vague subject, isn't it?
It was suggested by Nate Nathaniel, and hi Nate, and it's a really good subject to talk about, I think, because it gets used a lot, and it's something just kind of general, I guess. You know what? Since we're kind of going into it, I think this is a more natural flow into kind of getting into, you know. So plot armor, what do you think of first? Like, you know, what comes to mind? Like, what necessarily is it? Actually, Chris, how you doing, man?
All right. So the one that I was actually really thinking of that I absolutely love as a plot armor device
Mm-hmm.
is obviously, you know, my go-to is video games for this.
Oh yeah.
But one of my favorite, like, both in terms of someone who does it really well and is both kind of a subversion and the example of the trope that a lot of people think of,
Mhm.
is The Legend of Zelda.
Yeah, I was. I read a little something about that earlier, but I'm gonna let you go first and see if it's the same thing.
Yeah, is that basically, you know, everyone kind of understands the general format of The Legend of Zelda, which is, you know, Link starts off as being kind of a nobody.
Yep.
Link then, you know, is tasked with a great quest to go out and, you know, gain the Triforce. Whether that be through whatever component parts or anything else, you know. Defeat Ganondorf, save the princess, have the happy ending. You know, that's how it works. It repeats throughout time.
Yep.
There is one game where that is subverted, though. And that's actually canon in Nintendo's timeline, which is the Ocarina of Time.
Mm-hmm.
Because in the Ocarina of Time, if you actually lose that final fight against Ganondorf, it splits off into separate timelines.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, that's because it splits into the
Timelines.
Link to the Past and into the original series. Actually, the first game is in that timeline.
Yep.
Yeah, is basically, if you look at it in the very first Legend of Zelda, the Great Deku Tree that you see is actually one of the first dungeons you enter in the original Legend of Zelda, but it's dead.
And since there, wait a minute, but in Ocarina of Time, like, you still plant a new one.
Yeah, well, that's the point. Is if Link died, then Ganon would have went and probably killed that. So no new Deku Tree would have ever grown.
Oh, okay.
Yeah. And so basically what you get is, depending on which background story they want to use, the hero being, for the hero defeating Ganondorf in Ocarina of Time, you either start off with Majora's Mask or Waker.
I think it's Majora's Mask after.
It's basically whether the Sacred Realm never gets entered into, or whether Ganondorf actually gets into it and then is sealed by the Seven Sages.
Isn't there 3? There's 3.
Yeah, there's 3 timelines.
It's win, lose, and doesn't show up.
Yeah.
Is that it?
Yeah, and then the third one is A Link to the Past.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, because that's the 7 Sages. Was in that one.
Oh yeah, which is a continuation of.
Yeah.
Is
basically the 7 Sages do the job that Link cannot do because he's dead.
Yeah, he's not around anymore.
But yeah, it's one of those. I always thought that one was very interesting because traditionally in video games, I mean, you have permanent plot armor. You're the main character, and if you die, you can just reload your save.
But that game's lore, they have different series of games, and now they're actually like referring to those timelines when they start to release things now too, as in like the dark timeline, the one where the hero lived, and the one where the hero never showed up. They actually refer to those timelines when they release games now. So I mean, they have their own canon. They have their own alternate universe that's based around that simple, like, not neglect of plot armor, but keeping it kind of in mind, I guess. Which is kind of a cool way to build it.
Yeah, I like it because it means that they kind of intend for the story of Link to be something that can be told and retold. It's very zen and whatnot.
Very Celtic.
Yeah.
No, I like it. Bill, what do you think of when plot armor kind of comes around?
Actually, the first thing I think of would be a example of it being done bad. Is Gundam Seed.
Could you kind of go into
Jesus Yamato?
Jesus Yamato.
Go ahead.
Okay, so Akira Yamato is the main character.
Okay.
And, well, one of the worst things they did with Gundam Seed is, like, the designer decided only a Gundam can be a Gundam. Like as if the mobile suits themselves had, like, power levels or something ridiculous like that. So it's kind of like Gundam Wing in the fact that nothing, like, grunt level can even touch any of the Gundams.
Right.
But the main character is ridiculous. I think in one episode, his mech just gets totally destroyed and he just comes out of it like, oh, I'm fine. Of the same level of when Hiroyui blows up his Gundam in Wing and just flies out of it and he's totally chill. It's fine.
Yeah, that's happening. Okay.
Are most of those fights in space too?
Actually, most Gundams have a Earth and space arc.
Okay.
So most of that stupid stuff happens on Earth.
But to elaborate on that, like, Jesus Yamato actually at one point literally takes a beam to the chest and it hits him in the cockpit and the cockpit doesn't eject, but now he's cool. Like,
what, you can't brush off laser shots?
You can't just drink in that juice? That laser juice? It was on the shelves in 1990 for a while.
It was.
Yeah, Gundam Seed was like the turning point in Gundam where it started, like, it became less of like this interesting commentary on soldiers, war, and awesome realistic mech design to terrible super high octane action where the main character is the only one that can do anything ever.
And that's why UC Gundam is the best.
Yeah, pretty much UC Gundam is the best. And then G Gundam.
And then G Gundam. Always G Gundam. There's some plot armor in G Gundam too, but you know what? That show is just ridiculous?
That show's not meant to be taken seriously.
You know what? Yeah, and we'll get into there. I actually have a section labeled "When is it unforgivable" and "When is it just ridiculous." But we'll get into that later. Yeah, Todd, what do you think of for plot armor?
What I think of, let me pose a simple question to you, gentlemen. Why doesn't Batman just kill the Joker?
You know what, Todd?
Well, the answer is the Joker has plot armor.
I believe the answer is because he doesn't want his parents to see him.
Of course. Yeah. Why doesn't Batman bring back his parents? They can't
Speaking of that, there is a Batman that could kill the Joker. Did you actually see this week? One of the designers for Square Enix's Play Arts Skyline actually did a redesign of Batman. And it's horrifying.
Yeah, we're gonna need to link that one in the description.
Yeah. It's like it is a great design because basically it's like a full armored Batman. Looks more like a bat.
It's like a mix between Batman Beyond, Kingdom Come, and Asbats.
Oh man,
the Azrael Batman from Nightfall.
I love and hate Azrael Batman at the same time.
That is who takes over for Batman after Bane breaks his back, which was not...
spoilers!
Well, it's been 2 years since Nightfall.
That is the Utropeia rule.
They don't show that in the Nolanverse, which would have been Whoa, holy shit. Batshit insane.
Like you didn't even finish it before you
I was too taken aback. And I've got it poised in front of me, too.
Sounds like you've got bats in the belfry. There we go. There's my one. No, yeah, because Joker has been. How many times have we seen him almost get killed and then get away and all that? And it's with a lot of superhero, like supervillains, their arch nemesis. If they die, then the interest that people have in watching the hero will diminish, and so you have to have that. And the Joker is such a well-known example because Batman is so well-known that the Joker just always comes back. And there's been a couple stories where the Joker has died, but those have been like
he should have died from infection in New 52.
What, you can't get along without your face?
You can't just
apparently
Nicolas Cage your way out of that one.
So I think we need to make a list of things you can do if you have plot armor. So far you can get blasted in the chest with lasers and not have a face. So
can also have a successful game series.
We're making the ultimate plot armor hero here. But yeah, that's where I go to is Joker, just because of those distinct reasons I talked about. It's pretty much a cross between popularity and being a foil for the hero.
Yeah, and you just kind of you keep him around just to have that conflict constantly there. I mean, it would be work to constantly have new villains that challenge and re-challenge the hero realistically.
We don't do that in comics.
No, not usually.
No.
I mean,
not even when they do it and they do it well, they just get rid of them as quick as possible.
Yep. What was presented when this topic came up was Wolverine, and I feel like I have to touch on him because he has what's called a healing factor, if you didn't know. So you can...
You're the one who didn't know that.
Yeah, if you are the one guy, maybe you're listening to this at a Tim Hortons and you're not really sure like how you came across this channel. And
is that a Wolverine's Canadian?
Actually, I wasn't trying. I kind of was just going with the Canada.
Is that just subconscious?
I think it was. No. Wolverine is Canadian, and being Canadian, he has a really good healing factor.
Like most Canadians. So, I mean, you can see it in... I think I'm probably one of the only people who saw this movie, but not Wolverine Origins, but The Wolverine, that movie. Oh, yeah, I saw that.
Okay, out of the three people...
We actually saw the silver samurai armor when we were at San Diego Comic-Con last year. Yeah.
Was it just as disappointing?
Yeah, it was pretty much the best part you could have gotten out of that movie.
But
It was just in a park.
Yeah, it was just, I think that almost makes it better than the film.
But in that movie, he protects a man from a nuclear blast at the bottom of a well by having the radiation penetrate his back, and he lives. Wolverine has lived through so many stupid things. Just his skin practically getting atomized. If we just don't get into alternate universes where only his skeleton's alive, his adamantium skeleton, Wolverine has gone through some stuff.
Adamantium skeleport?
That's our ultimate universe.
Well, and I'll bring up the most ridiculous example of that later, because it's one I definitely wanted to touch on.
Okay. Oh gosh. But yeah, it's Wolverine has some major plot armor, but the thing is they don't really like set a limit on what his healing factor is. I think just short of like decapitating him. I know that he's drowned a couple of times, but that doesn't work on him.
Yeah, I think that's one of the major ways like to get rid of him is you could drown him. That's why he freaks out on water. I think that's only if he
stays in the water.
Yeah. Because the second they pull him back out, a la Days of Future Past, if you will, because I counted. There's no way he could have been okay. To be honest, that movie shouldn't have ended the way it did with Wolverine.
I don't know. Remember, it's not 2 years yet.
Oh yeah, fair enough. But there's serious plot armor there. I'll just say that much. Who I thought of first, I think as a bigger example, is the main cast of Star Wars. Because out of all of those stormtroopers, you'd think one of them would know how to fire a blaster? Maybe?
Well, they actually have a reason for that in universe. Because George Lucas is a hack. That's not actually the reason in universe.
It is the reason, but not the one in the universe.
Yeah, the reason in universe is apparently when they started to mass produce the Imperial blasters as a result of having to do the massive arms race and gear up, they actually used imperfect crystals in the resonance chambers for the blasters. What that means is the lasers just kind of went everywhere.
Also, stormtroopers are stupid.
Well, actually, that's going to be the other thing that I have heard about that is once things got to bigger, they stopped quality checking the clones. Fans will come up with any reason.
To have the stormtroopers not be cool dudes in suits, and to make sure that...
Make Boba Fett the coolest dude in the suit.
To not have 50 people in a hallway not be able to hit a man-sized target at 40 yards.
Yep. Have Han Solo be the only one who can fire a blaster. Have Leia only get grazed in the arm maybe once. Have the droids... I think the droids got shot maybe, but... seriously.
Yeah, but they're droids, no one cares.
And out of all the dogfights and out of all the BS, like... No, the Star Wars movie is full of just plot armor. They should have been maimed. Sorry.
It was the Force.
You're right. The Force is plot armor.
Pretty much.
Gosh.
Also midichlorians.
Midichlorians.
Plot armor is comprised of bacteria.
You know what? In a galaxy far, far away, a long time ago, plot armor. That's what it was. It was mostly plot armor in that section of the galaxy. Just no one died, everyone lived forever. It was just cocoon.
Todd, I reject your theory of bacteria because it's already explained in the movies of the Star Wars universe that the Force is just a mystic power that runs through all living things.
It's space magic! Why can't it just be space magic? Space magic!
Well, now we're just getting off on a tangent, but the easiest way to explain that away is just to say that midichlorians are bacteria that are attracted to the energy that Force, like people that are Force sensitive, give off. Mm-hmm. So essentially that, like the third episode of Mushishi, when they talk about the bacteria that sucks on the life force, or like the life stream, and that's why they can see the life streams, because it's all that.
But 1 through 3 don't exist. Just deny them.
You're so refreshing, not like Tatooine. The sand gets everywhere.
Sand. All my plot armor is filled with sand.
Not like you, Batman. Woo! Okay.
Moving
on. So we've talked about like just the sort of intro to plot armor, just that it's when things that would logically happen tend to necessarily not to just move the plot along, to just continue the story. Just what, the character has to be here, so let's do that. Is there a time when it's okay or just sort of understood? Like, is there a time where we can kind of let go of the fact that this is a completely unrealistic situation? These characters should either be incapacitated or just dead. Is there like a place or time where it's kind of okay to have plot armor? Bill, what do you think?
If we're just saying like that makes it okay, I think you have to have a certain level of investment from your audience already.
Yeah, I would agree.
Like, I think most action movies can get away with it. Maybe not so much after the fact, but your first viewing of an action movie, you usually really don't care about the plot armor because you're so invested in the story or you're so caught up in the suspense that when it happens, you're just like, oh, okay. Like, if it's too jarring, it'll take you right out of it. So obviously you do have to kind of finesse your way into it. But I think if you have enough built up around it, people will suspend disbelief just that extra little bit to have some kind of conclusion.
I would agree. Are you thinking of anything in particular? Any action movie?
Well,
yeah.
I know one that kind of is at least jarring, and because a lot of people brought it up, and this is kind of plot armor-ish, is at the end of Avengers.
Okay.
They don't talk about the Shintari being a hive mind at all.
Yep.
And so when the ship's blown up
just
and they all just kind of die, you're just like, huh. Like, I know, like, to me, because I'm a huge nerd, and the idea of a hive mind, especially for aliens, is not a foreign concept to me. So I just immediately thought, okay, they're a hive mind, that's why they're all dead.
Yep.
But I know that was a big complaint from a lot of people.
Really? Huh.
Oh, yeah, most of the nitpicking I see from Avengers is either that or the fact that you never see them put in earpieces, yet they're able to all talk to each other.
Yeah, there's that.
But that's one that people are willing to ignore more.
Mm-hmm. That's understood.
Because, they're like, okay, they're talking to each other, I can assume there's an earpiece or something, or they have some kind of communication device. I guess that's a kind of has both in the Avengers.
Yeah, I would agree. When you brought that up, I was actually thinking of Die Hard.
Yeah, Die Hard be exactly that. Well, depending on which one.
Like,
well, it's actually funny because I think they at one point in like the late '80s they actually had a trauma surgeon sit down and analyze all the damage that Bruce Willis would have taken throughout the movie, and I think it was he would have died no less than like 27 times or something.
Survives on badass.
Yeah,
pretty much.
Where he's like no, he's like that would have just killed someone. It's like that's not
dropping down onto a moving elevator in bare feet. No, you'd be fine. You're totally fine. Walking across broken glass.
I think he actually counted like 3 of the deaths were for broken glass, and death due to blood loss.
Yeah, but that scene where he walks across the glass barefoot, so badass.
It is true.
It's like a modern cowboy. It's just too cool.
Well, it's one of the things that's actually funny with plot armor is because we actually do have 2 different real life cases of plot armor. Okay. One of them I will go with kind of the classic, which is Hitler. Hitler survived.
Why would we ever use Hitler for an example of anything?
No, it's actually an odd example, but
Hitler actually survived over like 120 assassination attempts.
Yeah.
Good God.
Kind of
Some of them
ridiculous.
involving things like bombs going off in the room with him.
Yep.
Somehow he was okay. And then the only person who could kill Hitler was Hitler.
Or Ava Braun, depending on which story.
Either or.
Depending on which canon you subscribe to. Pretty much.
And I'm hoping your second example, Chris, is the one that I'm thinking you're going to tell.
My second example is actually George Washington.
Yes.
Yeah, because actually
That's
in the
more
memoirs,
American example.
well, because in the memoirs of a British soldier, a British sniper actually at one point had a perfect shot on George Washington, and he couldn't pull the trigger because he was too majestic sitting up upon his horse. That he felt that man should not be struck down by bullets.
Oh, that
And
is
he just-
plot armor, isn't it?
And he just wandered off the battlefield. Straight up. Could have shot George Washington.
You
Didn't.
win this round, Washington.
I just like the storyboard for this unfolding as I'm looking at it. I can see his angry, determined face just lining up the sights, the bayonet just gently resting below the chin as he lines it up, but the clouds separate and the light breaks through, and he turns and he looks at him, the horse whinnies up, his wig is just flowing in the air, he gives him that wooden smile, and as the gun is lowered down, and you see the full frame shot of his face, with a single tear falling down.
Oh, I knew it was going to end with a tear.
Him just going, "Call blimey, I can't do it.
He's just too majestic.
He's just too beautiful. God bless America." As he gallops off with the sunbeam following him all the way up to
A
Paul
bald
Revere's
eagle
house.
lands on his shoulder. Just so goddamn patriotic.
America.
So yeah, we actually in part were, our first president had legitimate plot armor. Because why not? America.
America.
Hey, there's actually a couple presidents. Roosevelt.
Mm-hmm.
The story of the Rough Riders, where they charged a hill after half of them had been murdered.
Yeah.
Jeez.
The Cubans had the high ground, and they were picking them off. I think there was one 1/4 or 1/3, and Roosevelt's was like, "We gotta go up this hill." It's like, "I'm just gonna go. You guys come with me, or I'll shoot you."
It's about
And they
right for
charged
him,
it,
isn't it?
and then they took it.
We can't shoot the
and then-
president.
Well, and then of course Teddy Roosevelt also survived an assassination attempt where someone shot him at point blank range in the chest, and because he lifts, he proceeded to get shot in the chest, subdue his own attacker, and then finish his speech.
As if
I
nothing
like
happened.
both take
man's
it.
Tabasco.
Teddy Roosevelt actually is the father of weightlifting, if you never knew that. Of weightlifting as a sport.
Were the weights triangular back in the day?
I
I believe
giant
so.
balls.
Hey, yep.
It's a very historical episode of Utropia.
Oh, Todd, what do you bring to the table? What do you have to uplift us?
I think plot armor is very well used. If your movie generally flows through like flashback,
Mhm.
and your character is talking in the beginning, and it's his death scene or something,
Mm.
and he says, something like, "This is my story."
Okay.
Then it goes into it, so you know right there that your character isn't gonna die,
Mhm.
because he's not destined to die till the end or beginning, whatever. So you could believe that he or she, whoever, would be able to do all these impossible things and survive, because you are given aforementioned information at the beginning that they are to die at a specific point later.
Mhm.
And a pretty good example I can think of that was Megamind.
Yes.
Because in the beginning he's like falling to his doom, and he's like, "Oh, here's where we are," and then he's like, "Well, I'll tell you my whole story now." So like through that whole thing that no matter what, he's going to at least survive until that point. So
Yeah. And I would tag up on that with it's a very good example. I would also tag up on that with if you're watching like the first series in a movie and there's a sequel where that character is alive, you know.
Yeah. You kind of know they're making it through the first one.
Yeah, well, and I think it's important to make the distinction on what plot armor actually is, because there's things like, you know, a guy gets shot in the shoulder and survives,
Yeah.
and stuff like that. It's when things should have killed them but didn't due to either something or luck. But you know, it's like we were talking about with the Die Hard example,
Yeah.
where he should have been dead, but in terms of a story, it makes sense. It makes sense in many ways for your main character to survive up until the big bad or something.
Yeah. If you have 3-act structure kind of storytelling.
Yeah, because I mean, you know, you could write the world's most abrupt ending to a story ever, where, you know, you go through and you've already got 300 pages of talking about your character going through all these situations, and he's fighting the bad guys, and then
it's just done.
because he just got shot in the head. Yeah, and yeah, it could be one of those, like, you could do that. You'd have a lot of very upset fans. like it's one of those. I would almost kind of relate it to a principle in music theory. Whereas, have you ever had one of those, like, when the radio cuts off to do like a commercial and they cut off like the last couple of bars of a song, and it feels ungratifying?
Yeah.
Is it's like that? Is you expect this ending, and if it doesn't happen, then it kind of cheapens the overall feeling for you.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I would agree to that.
Yeah, it's more about keeping the reason why they're still alive up to that point from being bullshit.
Mm-hmm. Jeez. Okay, these are all good points. The only other one that I would probably add to that for, like, when is it understood or when can it be okay, is when it's like children's programming, pretty much. So if you're like, you know, watching a show about learning colors and shapes, like, you know, Dora the Explorer or something like that, and you have to cross like a raging river to get to the other side, or there's like crocodiles that you have to count to, you know, get to the place where you have a
jumping across dangerous reptiles.
Frogger
Well, yeah, because you don't even necessarily want that as an experience to be like harrowing, even. I'm pretty sure children don't need stress at that age.
Yeah.
It's sort of like why in a lot of shows, and we've talked about this with like the Ice Powers episode, our very first one, like why characters don't get just like frozen and shattered and killed forever. Because these superhero shows, they're not necessarily always for kids, but I mean, they do keep it with a like general audience in mind.
And also, like, freezing and shattering your main go against or your main character is just kind of makes for a lame story.
I mean, it's a quick solution, but
how cheap would you feel if you left like a movie after that? It's like 5 minutes long, and like someone shoots someone with an ice gun and just shatters them.
Wait to see
done.
the Frozone movie for Disney's Incredibles. Freezed and shattered and relocated, and the rest of the credits is just him on the bus with his new paperwork.
It's like an hour and a half of the credits, and it's just like a true to life timing of him riding a bus.
Winds up being like the intro part of Birdemic. Follows him in his car in real time in his morning traffic commute.
Such a bad movie.
And speaking of bad movies, when is plot armor just absolutely unforgivable? When is it just like absolutely ridiculous? Like you can't necessarily ignore it. What's a level of plot armor that you can think of that's just like I can't believe this. This is absolutely nuts. Todd, have you gone first yet?
No, but I don't have like a really like solid one that I could think of.
Yeah, boy, what?
Huh?
What?
Bill?
You blew it.
You blew it.
It was your chance.
Oh,
You
It was your
blew it.
chance. Your chance to dance.
Oh, I
well,
might as well just take off all my plot armor and die.
Well, I'll bring up what I was talking about with Wolverine earlier.
Yes.
In terms of, it's one of those. Obviously, no superhero can ever die, ever.
Mhm.
They're gonna get brought back eventually. So,
For most cases, yeah, absolutely.
but Wolverine actually has in one of the stories, and I forget exactly which series it was, is literally atomized,
Yep.
and he comes back.
Well, I think it's. I'm gonna say Lobo can regenerate from a single drop of blood his entire body.
Yeah.
Well,
But
yeah,
but
but
Lobo's
we're
is a
talking-
little different than Wolverine because Lobo.
Because Lobo is a commentary
Yeah,
on 90s
he
extreme.
Yeah.
is that like parody of like the Wolverine kind of character.
Yeah,
Mhm.
but Wolverine literally gets atomized, and there's a problem. And there's a problem with this because if he can come back from an atom, it is no longer a genetic power.
Yeah. Then
Because
it's
you know
molecular.
because you know what genes are made of.
Denim.
Oh.
But yeah, it was one of those moments reading it where I remember because I was probably like 12, and even I stopped and was like, okay, come on. Really?
This is where I'm gonna draw the line.
This comic about the man who has giant blades in his arms and the guy who shoots laser beams out of his eyes, but that's just too far.
That's the whole thing. It's not a genetic power if it works at less than genes.
Well, what if it worked on a khaki level? There we go.
Ken was waiting on that one. He was too quick to the draw.
I was thinking, I may or may not have been thinking of a Jort joke at the same time, but I'm glad Todd brought khakis into it.
Well, and then I remember one major example from when I was little.
Yeah.
That was playing Lunar. And there actually gets to be a point where about midway through the series, you wind up fighting, the face of the big bad, who is Galleon.
Okay.
Right? And because my brother and I like to grind, or
Sick.
board kids or
Might wanna
something,
reword
yeah.
that.
Is there's actually a fight that you're supposed to lose with him. Except we were so over-leveled and overpowered that we could just regain mana and heal pretty much infinitely.
Okay.
And so we literally set up an auto-controller to go through the motions for it, and then let it sit for, I don't know, like 3 hours. Came back, still in the fight, still alive.
Well, there's a good
And they're
example.
like, oh yeah, you're supposed to lose that fight.
Yeah, well, that's a good example of a kind of plot armor. It's like scripted battles.
Yeah.
Like in video games like Mega Man X
Yep.
Oh, you're gonna go there.
is the first fight with Vile epitomizes that. Like there's no way you could win. But so like at that point, Vile's just covered in plot armor in his ride armor.
Yeah.
And there's no way you're meant to lose that, and it's like that for a reason. It's to symbolize the helplessness and whatnot. It's a very good way to use plot armor, but it is one of the examples where the main character does not have it, where his adversary does.
Yeah, and they do that in like Paper Mario also for Bowser when he gets the Star Rod.
Mm-hmm.
I think they're in certain like RPG games actually.
Yeah, there's a lot of
there'll be
scripted fights, in all of those too. So it's not an uncommon part of the trope at all. But one, none of us really thought of right away until Chris really started talking about it. So I'm glad it came up.
Oh well, I think you know what I'm kind of just into doing wherever the conversation takes us. But Bill, can you think of an example of when it's just unforgivable or ridiculous? Something that just can't be ignored, pretty much.
I can kind of think of a couple examples for this, but I really hate when it ruins a very interesting like turn of events or mood that is established. And this is a lot with superhero comics, and a lot of like I would say kind of kid shows, but animation in general, where the plot armor seems to fail and a main character dies, but then they're immediately brought back for whatever reason.
The dramatic comeback or something like that.
Yeah, like it can be done well, I'm sure, but a lot of the times it kind of ruins all the emotion that you were supposed to feel after.
Although sometimes it's a really awesome moment when you.
Well, that's what I said. It can be done well, but most of the time it kind of cheapens it. The only example I can think of, and I don't hate it as much, but it's because I have a giant poster on my wall for Wak Fu. Has it been 2 years for that?
I think it has, actually.
Yeah, because I did the subs for it like 3 years ago. But yeah, when Sadly Grove gets killed by Razor Time.
Yep, Razzle-Tomp.
And like he has this big like moment with Evangeline, and he says, like, oh, I'm gonna join the legend. And she's sad. Everybody was like that was an emotional wreck because Sadly Grove was the comic relief, especially if like the comic relief is gone.
Yep.
Like, and then it just like they didn't even like attempt to keep any tension build to build for his return in the second season. It was just he's back, third episode, we're good.
Well, they had it has it been 2 years for the second season? I don't know.
Yeah, the second season came out like a year after, so it should be just 2 years,
just within it, because in that very first episode it went with like Evangeline thought that he was still alive, like people were telling her that she was crazy. They didn't even like let her have like that moment of doubt. You
could have had almost half the season with Ava on like a trip to like figure out what happened.
That would have been great.
And it was like 3 episodes and they were done with it.
That was the arc.
Especially since like it brought Evangeline back to where she was in the beginning of the show as the badass leader of the group. Is because when she started admitting she had feelings for Sadly Grove, she kind of became like the damsel in distress. And I hate using that term just because of the people it's connected to. But anyway, like she went from being the person who was competent and strategized for the group to getting captured every episode so Sadly Grove could save her until like the last at like the big epic final for the story. So it went back in the beginning, like she cuts her hair, she changes her outfit, she had all this character development, and then with him being back, it just kind of was like, all right, so now we're just back to where we were at the beginning of the show.
They gave her like a rival and everything too, like the gun versus the bow. They had like a total
Remington Smiths, like they had like an interesting relationship as he like wanted to be all suave and like seduce her, and she was having none of it.
And he also
it was good.
That dude turned into a total bitch after that story arc too. Like he just went to hell, and then he was just like a total wuss, and that was it. Like he tried coming back, but he was never like as badass. It was just him like sniveling and hiding from demons and like fanning people the whole time. Yeah. Like they totally shot on that character. Just immediately afterwards. I don't know. And like, what about that for plot armor too? Just going to hell and not dying? I don't know. The example that I had written down was for it being unforgivable and ridiculous is pretty much like what we were talking about earlier with Lobo and A Drop of Blood and like 90s extreme is well maybe not completely with these examples, but it's Master Chief, where everything that he does is the best.
One-man army.
Yep, he's a one-man fighting army. In Halo, he just kick flips a warthog and rides it all the way down to the center of the Halo to throw 3 plasma grenades into the center. He'll fight an entire army by himself. He's absolutely nutso perfect. The Hulk is huge on plot armor.
Oh god, I hate
the Hulk. The angrier he gets, the stronger he gets, and the heavier he gets. So his weight can just be super exponential. Like you can never really lift him or affect him the more you hurt him. He's an infinity. He's just a superpowered infinity equation. You can't hurt him.
And also the only superhero from Ohio.
Also that.
What about Squirrel Girl?
No, she's from Wisconsin, I thought.
Okay. She's got a lot of plot armor too, but
Bruce Banner, Dayton, Ohio.
She is plot armor the canner. plot armor the character.
Yeah.
But she's used as such
That's Squirrel Girl's appeal. Until they ruined
it's
her.
another one of the it's a parody character kind of thing, where you allow that kind of thing because they're a parody. In fact, you revel in it.
Mm-hmm.
Like you want to watch Lobo get beat up most of the time, but you also want to see him like come back from it and say stupid things. So
Yeah.
and Squirrel Girl's a good example of that. You know, she beats like Thanos and Galactus and stuff. They have her beat like these insanely powerful villains, always
Dr.
off screen.
Doom.
I think Dr. Doom was the only one they ever did, like, because that was her introductory comic.
Yeah, that you see it.
Yeah.
But it's just.
And the funniest thing about that though is how upset Marvel gets about it, and then they have to like change it. Like, no, that was a Doombot. Oh, that wasn't Thanos. That was a copy.
And you have to really just bless those writers' hearts that try their best to just have fun.
Well, I think the whole thing with Thanos though is because we all know this. Death is just not that into it. So, you know.
You get it.
Yeah. No, I think that deserves a bell. No. Actually, you know what? That's pretty good plot armor for Thanos. Just that, you know, Death just doesn't like him, so she won't hang around him.
Speaking of Squirrel Girl, we should bring up another member of the Great Lakes Avengers that has
Mr. Immortal?
fantastic plot armor as Mr. Immortal, who is
Mr. Immortal.
pretty much best friends with the Grim Reaper, so he will never die. Well, so he will die, but he immediately comes back from the dead afterwards. And
he's got friends on the other side.
If you get a chance, read Great Lakes Avengers Disassembled. It's an amazing book.
It's a good book. Anything with the Great Lakes Avengers Initiative, Champions,
whatever.
X-Men.
It's a really fun book, and Mr. Immortal pretty much summarizes plot armor as a character. Like ideally, I'm surprised it's taken us this long to actually talk about him. He's like a poster boy for plot armor, because you just can't kill him.
But he feels everything is the thing. Like, he feels the gunshot, he feels getting stabbed or drowned or whatever it is. He just can't die from it.
Yeah, he just like dies temporarily and just immediately comes back.
Yeah. It's like, I guess there's Kenny from South Park. I was gonna kind of talk about Kenny.
Another good example of that.
I don't know if I'd say his is plot armor though, because he just comes
more
back
of a running joke.
It definitely did start off as non-canonical, because it was just like, you know, they thought it was funny. They thought it was funny to just have him die and for them to say, "Oh my God, you killed him, you bastards." But later on, they actually embraced it. Like, they gave him a reason behind it, and then they like gave another reason, and now
wasn't it like in the superhero episode or something?
Yeah, the Return of the Coon or whatever it was.
There was, I think,
Mintberry Crunch.
Yeah, Mintberry Crunch. They did that one, and in all of those superhero ones, they'll say that it's because his parents went to like a couple of cultist meetings for free food. so Kenny's mom's uterus pretty much got cursed, so she always has a child, and they put that child in Kenny's bed, and it wakes up and has the same consciousness as the previous Kenny.
Jeez.
Yeah, and originally it was just a joke. Like, in the second or third season or what have you, they just did a joke about like Kenny's mom was going to have another baby, and Kenny kept freaking out because he thought it was going to be like a demon child that would kill him. And then when the mom, it's like the 52nd episode, she has another kid, and it's born with like the little orange hoodie on, and they say, "Looks just like Kenny. We'll name him Kenny." This is like the 50th time that's happened, right? No, it's 52. All right. They made it like an actual thing. Like, they listened to their fans. They looked at their old writing. I don't know. I think that's more of an example of like when it's okay. Actually,
that's when you could really because it's so ridiculous that way that you're like, I get it, and Like you said, that's the Kenny thing. Really, I wouldn't classify it under plot armor. Like Bill said, it's really just more of like a running joke. But
yeah.
you get into it and it gets a little more plot armory. But that's a fantastic way to do it. It's very satire driven.
Yeah, I'd say so.
Yeah. Well, and you know, one of the ones I actually would like to bring up forward is, you know, kind of the classic trope of beating death at a game of chess.
Oh, like
Yeah, outwitting death.
Bill and Ted's Bogus Journey.
Yeah.
Perfect, flawless example.
Exactly. Oh, and yeah, you know, it's one of those, especially when you begin to get some stories with metaphysical aspects. It's difficult to say whether there's such a thing as plot armor or not.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's because effectively you can get taken out of the fight, but it doesn't mean you're, you know, dead.
Almost makes me want to talk about Chalk on the Forever Man, but we'll spare our audience that.
I was gonna get into Billy and Mandy also. They befriend the Grim Reaper. They should never be canceled, technically.
I like the idea of them just be like, no, we're contractually obligated. Like,
we can't. We can't. Like, we want to, but it just can't happen. Maxwell Adams is just an old man. Like, I can't stop. Like, the premise was just too good. Okay, cool. I think we've covered a lot of plot armor. Maybe not everything, but we're at a pretty decent mark right now. Any final statements or thoughts about just plot armor in general? How you feel about it? If
Go watch Last Action Hero.
Watch Last Action Hero.
Yes.
Any reasoning behind it?
That shows what happens when a character with plot armor is taken out of into plot armor. And
Oh, it does. That's a really good example of that.
Glad we brought
It's
it up.
not a great movie, but it's
Because
kind
the
of
idea
stupid.
behind it was supposed to be like that parody of like action stars and stuff like
yeah,
that. And
exactly.
when you take an action star out of his element, yeah, it's a perfect example. They no longer have plot armor, and they're gonna get really messed up by really simple things.
Well, and yeah, I mean, relatively speaking, it's one of those. Yeah, I think in terms of touching on it as an overall thing is that you could write a story about a character, you know, like we talked about. You know, your character could die to small fry, but for many people, that's a very unsatisfying story.
Mm-hmm.
And I feel like in many ways, you know, it's one of those kind of, in the whole human history of storytelling, we like to see the meeting of the tops. I mean, hell, we used to do it in wars too, where basically you'd have your greatest warriors come out and fight your champions. You know, it's one of those. There's something kind of innate in us that likes to see the paragons of the two sides, and so. Is it something that I feel like is overused or anything else, rather than kind of being a necessity? And I think really more what it comes down to in terms of plot armor is that, you know, make sure, you know, when you write, make sure that it's believable, that you're not going to have people be like, oh, come on. Because you can have them go through harrowing and death-defying things, but, you know, they shouldn't be able to, like I said in the example, was they can't take a bullet to the head or get atomized and all of a sudden be cool again.
Like you were saying, it's know your suspension of disbelief. You could have them go through everything, but just make sure you don't go too insanely far with it to where you lose your audience.
Yeah, is every consumer, when it comes to any sort of story, has a level of suspension of disbelief that basically they give to you as the author, as the storyteller to begin with, and eventually that does run out. So, you know, use it well.
Just weighing story, I think, over like realism, I guess. Like, because what might be interesting for someone who's like, oh, I want to see how this thing that couldn't possibly exist interacts with things that actually do exist, and I want there to be like a little bit of truth to it, versus I just want to see a story about a man from Krypton coming to Earth and punching big things with his fist. I don't know. I guess it's just, I understand like when people get angry about things that couldn't possibly exist being unrealistic. And I understand, like, you know, you're drawn to something that you think is cool. Like maybe it's in Warhammer 40K and you like the armor designs and you think it's cool and gritty, and you know you want it to have like a little bit of what's the word I'm looking for here? Like dignity or a little bit of respect, I guess, by having it be just like, you know, you hold it in high regard. So you want it to be like, you know, foolproof. You don't want it to fall to any of these tropes. But, you know, when like a meteor crashes through, you know, a character or something like that, if there's an impossible situation and they get out of it and, you know, they get a little bit of shit, you know, you want to kind of stand up for that thing that you really love. But
yeah. But it's also one of those, if you get to a situation where, you know, upon reading it before releasing it to general public, if you get called on it,
yeah,
you should look at the alternative of, why do I need it to happen? like could I do it in a better way that would not use up my capital for it?
Yeah. I don't know. And I guess also when looking at it, you know, if you think that something is like ruining it for you, just think, well, I could not have this cool thing that I like with its one like flaw. I don't know. I guess I'm kind of used to talking to certain fans who, you know, maybe don't revel in the positives and see more of the negatives, and plot armor definitely comes up in those conversations. So I guess my final thoughts on it is, you know, maybe don't let it get to you. It's not fiction. It's fiction for a reason. So, you know, enjoy it for what it is.
Yeah, I concur.
Mm-hmm. Okay. This has been a very NPR-esque
This is our very low-key episode of Utropeia.
Well, clearly what it means is we just need to splice in the, like, what was it? It's like Good Morning, the one that they used to have on Sundays, like
monster truck rallies.
Sundays.
Exactly.
No, they used to have the, like, every Sunday morning they used to have the old like British guy sit there and tell you about stuff, and it was put on by NPR and everything, and they had very classy music at the front. Just put that on the front.
Okay, I'm just gonna title this as a very NPR episode. Okay. All right. I didn't mean to cut you off, Todd. Any other thoughts?
No. Yeah, I'm good. I think we covered everything really well.
All right, well, thank you all for listening to this very special episode of Utropeia. Turn in next week, we're going to be talking about character archetypes. Next week's episode is going to be the archetype of the jester, so the comedic relief. Very opposite.
Oh, that'll be very interesting.
Thank you, Mr. Yu Video. But signing off on this week's episode, it is Pumpken, and we're gonna start at the bottom and then loop back around to the top and end with Moonjump. So signing off, it's me, Pumpkin, and on to you, Todd Ogredose.
It's Todd Ogredose. Thank you very much for joining us in this program. I am very appreciative from the top of my giant turtle.
Thank you all for listening. I look forward to our next meeting.
And this is Chris Moonjump.
Moonjump.
Signing off for the night. Thank you all for coming.
Thanks, guys. Hope you found what you're looking for, and until we talk geek next week.
Bye.
Bye-bye.